I said, sign the papers, Richard. The microphone echoed through the chandelier-lit ballroom, freezing 200 wedding guests mid-toast. I looked up from my seat, calm as a pond before a storm. My new son-in-law, Aaron Blake, stood beside my daughter Emma, grinning like a man who thought he'd already won. The bastard thought tonight would be his coronation, the night he claimed my $2.4 million farm under the guise of family estate planning. But this wasn't his victory. This was the trap. I leaned forward. Aaron, I said, voice steady. You sure you want to do this in front of everyone? He chuckled into the mic. Come on, Richard. Let's make it official. My notary's here. The papers are ready. And this'll give everyone peace of mind. You've worked hard your whole life. It's time to let professionals handle the complicated stuff. Gasps fluttered through the crowd. The man was really doing it, hijacking his own wedding reception to rob his father-in-law blind. Aaron turned to the guests with a polished smile. For those who don't know, Richard here owns Blakewood Acres, 900 acres of prime Iowa farmland. A real American success story. But managing something that large at his age, well, that's a challenge. So I helped set up a family trust. Once Richard signs, I'll take care of the management, the taxes, the hard parts. Simple, safe, and secure. Simple, I repeated softly. He thought that word insulted me. He had no idea it defined him. The notary, or rather, the woman pretending to be one, stepped forward, handing Aaron a pen. If you'll just sign here, Mr. Blakewood. Not so fast, I said, pulling my phone from my pocket. Before I sign anything, I'd like to play something for the guests. Aaron's grin faltered. Richard, this isn't the time. I tapped the screen. The speakers filled with his voice. Old man won't even read the fine print. 2 million in dirt, tractors, and sentimental junk, all mine by spring. A hush fell so thick you could hear the ice melt into champagne flutes. Aaron's face turned the color of chalk. The crowd erupted in whispers. Emma's smile vanished. Aaron, what is that? I stood, buttoning my jacket. That's your husband bragging about stealing my farm. What he didn't know is I spent 30 years as a forensic accountant before I came back to farming. And for the last 4 months, I've been helping the state build a case against him and his firm. 2 men in suits stepped forward from the back, Detective Harris and Officer Green. The moment Aaron saw their badges, his composure shattered. This is a mistake, he stammered. You can't. Actually, Harris said, snapping on handcuffs. We can. We've got evidence you've scammed over $15 million from elderly clients across 3 states. Emma backed away, tears streaking her makeup. You used me. Aaron lunged toward her, but Green caught his arm. The DJ muted the music. The ballroom fell silent except for the metallic click of the cuffs. I faced the crowd. Aaron called me a simple farmer who didn't understand modern finance. Turns out, I understood it better than he ever will. As they led him away, I looked at my daughter. Emma, I'm sorry you had to find out this way. But tonight wasn't just your wedding. It was Justice Day for a lot of families. She nodded, trembling, then whispered, You knew all along, didn't you? I placed a hand on her shoulder. I knew he underestimated me. That's always the first mistake predators make. The applause started small, a few guests clapping hesitantly, then grew until the whole room roared. Not for revenge, but relief. Aaron Blake thought he'd found the perfect victim. Instead, he found his reckoning, live, on a wedding night he'd never forget. And as the police lights flashed outside the ballroom windows, I couldn't help but think, sometimes silence is the best strategy. Let the arrogant hang themselves. All you have to do is pull the truth tight. Paragraph 23. I said aloud, my voice steady. This trust is irrevocable and may not be modified or terminated without unanimous consent of all trustees. Aaron Blake smiled tightly, his tone dripping with condescension. Standard language, Richard. Just legal boilerplate. I looked up from the papers. 200 guests stared back at me, waiting. My daughter Emma's face glowed with excitement, her wedding dress shimmering under the ballroom lights. Aaron's law partners nodded in approval, their champagne glasses half raised. I'd like to review these more carefully, I said. Aaron's grin faltered for a fraction of a second before he caught himself. Of course. But Richard, it's your daughter's wedding. Let's not overcomplicate a simple signature. There it was, his move. The public pressure. The kind son-in-law making the old man look stubborn in front of 200 witnesses. But Aaron Blake had made one critical mistake. He'd chosen to pull this stunt in front of retired Judge Margaret Collins. Actually, I said evenly, I think Judge Collins should take a look at these first. Aaron froze. The confident lawyer's charm cracked like cheap porcelain. That's not necessary, Richard. These are standard documents. Margaret, I called. Would you mind lending your legal eye? She approached with calm authority, her silver hair gleaming in the chandelier light. Of course, Richard. What are we looking at? Aaron forced a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Just a family trust, basic estate planning. Margaret flipped through the pages, her expression shifting from polite curiosity to sharp concern. The silence in the ballroom grew heavy. Aaron, she said finally, could you explain paragraph 12? Aaron's jaw twitched. It's standard trustee authority. For efficiency. Efficiency, she said, eyebrows lifting. This grants you absolute control over Richard's assets, including the right to sell, mortgage, or encumber them, without his consent. And paragraph 23 makes the trust irrevocable. Richard would have no recourse once he signs. Aaron's face darkened. With respect, Judge, this is a private family matter. These are legitimate legal instruments. Margaret didn't blink. Who drafted them? My firm, Blake & Associates. We specialize in elder law. Elder law, she repeated, her voice cold as winter steel. I see. Her gaze flicked toward me. Richard, have you had independent counsel review this? No, I said clearly. Aaron told me that wasn't necessary. Aaron jumped in quickly. Richard, please, there's no need to complicate. Actually, I interrupted, sliding the papers aside. I've done some research of my own. A ripple of unease moved through the room. Aaron's smile twitched again. Research? Richard, with all due respect, estate law isn't something you can Google. Oh, I didn't Google it, I said. I hired someone. A private investigator. The room went dead quiet. Emma blinked. Dad, what are you talking about? Aaron's color drained. Richard, that's absurd. Why would you? Because something felt wrong. I rose slowly from my chair. The pressure, the urgency, the way you've been talking to me like I'm senile. It didn't add up. Aaron's composure faltered. You're embarrassing yourself. Am I? I reached into my jacket and pulled out a thick, spiral-bound folder. Because this says otherwise. Aaron's eyes locked on the folder like a cornered animal watching a gun. What is that? An 89-page report on you and your firm, I said. Compiled by a former FBI investigator who now specializes in white-collar crime. Gasps rippled across the ballroom. Aaron tried to laugh. This is ridiculous. Whoever you hired fed you garbage. I opened to the first tab. 3 active lawsuits against Aaron Blake and Blake & Associates for elder financial abuse. The guests began murmuring. Cameras flashed. Aaron's law partners were whispering behind their hands. Those are frivolous suits, Aaron stammered. Completely baseless. 12 complaints with the state bar, I continued. All with the same pattern. Pressure elderly clients into signing over control of their assets under the pretense of estate protection. Margaret's voice sliced through the tension. You've done this before, Mr. Blake. Aaron's mask cracked completely. This is slander. You can't. I flipped to the next page. Dorothy Henderson, age 78. Owned a grain elevator business worth over $1 million. You convinced her to create a trust under your management. 6 months later, she was living in a care facility while you sold her property. The ballroom went completely still. Emma stared at Aaron, tears forming in her eyes. Aaron, she whispered. Sweetheart, listen to me. Your father is confused. Robert Chun, I continued, my voice unwavering. 82, Cattle Ranch in Grundy County. You used the exact same trust document you're trying to get me to sign tonight. Those are templates. Aaron's voice cracked. Everyone uses them. I pulled out a small recorder. Then you won't mind if I play this. Aaron's face drained of color. What is that? A conversation my investigator recorded last month. You and your associate, discussing me. I pressed play. Aaron's voice filled the ballroom. This farm's a $2 million payday. The old man won't even read the fine print. Simple farmers never do. A wave of gasps broke through the crowd. Emma's hand flew to her mouth. Aaron lunged for the recorder. Turn that off. I stepped back. Oh, there's more. You said Emma would be easy to manage because she wants to believe she's protecting me. Emma made a choked sound. The entire room turned on Aaron. He spun desperately. This is a setup. Somebody's framing me. Actually, came a calm voice from the back. The setup is yours. Detective Ray Harris stepped forward, badge glinting in the light. Officer Green followed close behind. Aaron's jaw dropped. You called the police to a wedding? I invited them, I said. Old friends. Harris stepped up beside me. Mr. Blake, we've been investigating complaints about your firm for months. Tonight's little performance just confirmed everything. Aaron tried to back away, clutching the trust papers. You can't arrest me for this. It's a misunderstanding. Attempted fraud. Elder abuse. Conspiracy to defraud, Harris said flatly. He nodded to Green. Cuff him. The handcuffs clicked shut, loud as gunfire in the stunned silence. Aaron, Emma cried. Tell me it's not true. Aaron turned, wild-eyed. Emma, I did all this for us. For your future. He's manipulating you. But Emma wasn't looking at him anymore. She was looking at me, realization dawning through her shock. Dad, you knew all along. I nodded slowly. I knew enough. Harris began reading Aaron his rights. You have the right to remain silent. Aaron struggled as they led him toward the door. You think you're so clever, Richard? You orchestrated this whole thing. I smiled faintly. You're right. I did. That's what happens when you underestimate people. When the doors shut behind him, the ballroom erupted in whispers. Phones out. Guests stunned. But my focus was on Emma, my daughter, in her wedding dress, standing amidst the wreckage of her perfect day. She looked broken. Dad, I don't understand. He said he was helping us. He said you were too proud to accept guidance. I led her to a quiet corner. Honey, he wasn't helping anyone but himself. She sank into a chair. He showed me cases, families losing everything because they didn't plan right. Those were his own victims, I said softly. He twisted the truth to make himself look like a savior. Judge Collins joined us, resting a hand on Emma's shoulder. Your father did everything right, Emma. He protected you the only way he could. Emma's eyes filled again. And I defended him. Every time you tried to warn me, I sided with him. I called you paranoid. That's what manipulators do, I said gently. They make decent people feel guilty for asking questions. Emma's gaze drifted to the abandoned trust papers. He said you were just a farmer, that you didn't understand finance. I smiled faintly. What do you think I did before I came home to the farm? You were an accountant, she said hesitantly. Judge Collins chuckled softly. Emma, your father wasn't just an accountant. He was a forensic auditor for Fortune 500 companies, one of the best in the Midwest. Emma's mouth fell open. You what? I spent 30 years catching white-collar thieves like Aaron. I said. He just picked the wrong, simple farmer. She looked at me with new understanding and grief. He married me to get to you, didn't he? I hesitated. Maybe it started as love. Maybe it didn't. But the moment he saw what the farm was worth, love didn't matter anymore. Emma buried her face in her hands. I brought him into our family. I trusted him. I put a hand on her shoulder. You trusted the man you thought he was. That's not weakness, Emma. That's humanity. She took a shaky breath. Dad, one more thing. Is the farm safe? I smiled and pulled another folder from my briefcase. Completely. She blinked. What is that? Your inheritance. A properly structured trust drawn up by Blackstone Meyer and Associates. Established months ago. She opened the file. The documents were crisp, sealed, airtight. Trustee, First National Bank of Iowa, she read. Beneficiary, Emma Blakewood. Margaret examined it and nodded approvingly. Rock solid, Richard. He couldn't have touched a penny. Aaron had come to steal everything I built. Instead, he walked away in handcuffs. Emma looked up at me, tears shimmering. You knew how this would end, didn't you? I didn't know, I said quietly. But I prepared for it. That's what you do when people mistake your kindness for weakness. Across the ballroom, the band struck up again, hesitant at first. Guests began to whisper, the shock slowly turning into admiration. Emma squeezed my hand. You turned my wedding into a courtroom. I smiled. Sometimes, sweetheart, justice doesn't wait for a trial. Aaron wanted everything. Total, permanent control of the Blakewood estate, without oversight or accountability. The kind of power that left no escape once the ink was dry. Judge Margaret Collins set the papers down, her expression grave. That clause alone tells me exactly what kind of man you're dealing with, Richard. It's the hallmark of a financial predator. They build traps that look like protection, legal structures you can't undo. Emma stood nearby, still wearing her wedding dress, her eyes red from tears, but sharp now with realization. So all this, the investigation, the recording, the public reveal, it was you protecting both of us? I nodded slowly. I was protecting what your mother and I built for you. 4 generations of Blakewood history, Emma. Your inheritance, your future. She looked around the ballroom. Half the guests were gone. The ones who stayed, mostly Aaron's legal colleagues, huddled in tight clusters, whispering near the bar, their earlier arrogance replaced by dread. Dad? Emma said softly. What happens to Aaron now? That depends, I said. On the charges Detective Harris files, what the state bar uncovers, and whether his other victims come forward. There are a lot of people he's hurt. And to me? She asked. I reached for her hand. What do you want to happen, sweetheart? I want to annul the marriage, she said firmly. I want to make sure Aaron can't hurt anyone else. And I want to learn how to protect the farm, the way you do. I smiled. The first 2 are absolutely possible. The third, I squeezed her hand. You've got an MBA in agricultural business, Emma. You're already more qualified than Aaron ever was. I never thought about running the operation myself. You didn't have to, I said. I always planned for you to inherit a stable, well-managed farm, not a financial disaster created by a predator. Judge Collins rose. I'll check in with Harris about the next steps. Richard, make sure you hand over your investigation file. The prosecution will need it. Of course, I said. And thank you, Margaret, for standing by us. She smiled faintly. You trusted your instincts, Richard. Most people don't, not until it's too late. When she left, Emma and I sat together in the near-empty ballroom. The wedding that had begun as a celebration of love had turned into something much deeper, a lesson in trust, truth, and the quiet strength of family. Dad, she said after a while, I need to ask, when you announced you were transferring ownership of the farm, was that just a trick to throw him off? I laughed quietly. Emma, I never said I was selling the farm. Aaron assumed that's what I meant when I said he wouldn't get control of it. So the farm stays in the family? It stays right here, sweetheart. In the Blakewood family, where it's been for 4 generations, and where it'll stay for the next 4. Emma smiled through her tears. Aaron really didn't know who he was dealing with, did he? I smiled back. Aaron thought intelligence was loud, that credentials and charm made him untouchable. What he never understood is that real power is quiet, patient, and strategic. You don't confront a liar immediately. You let him build his own gallows. Like waiting 4 months before exposing him. Exactly like that. Emma stood, smoothing her gown. Dad, I think I'd like to go home now to the farm. I want to see it the way you see it. Not as a problem to be managed, but as a legacy worth protecting. I rose and offered my arm. There's nothing I'd like more. As we walked toward the exit, Emma paused. One last thing. Yes. Next time someone tries to scam our family, can we skip the 4-month investigation and just call Detective Harris on day 1? I laughed. Deal. But I don't think anyone will try this again. Why not? Because by tomorrow morning, every attorney in Iowa will know exactly what happened to Aaron Blake. Good, Emma said. Maybe it'll protect the next family. That's the idea, sweetheart, I said. Sometimes you have to make an example of someone, not for revenge, but to prevent the next tragedy. We stepped out of the ballroom, leaving behind the wreckage of Aaron's scheme and the beginning of Emma's real education in legacy, protection, and quiet strength. Detective Harris was waiting in the lobby with Officer Green and a woman in a tailored Navy suit. Mr. Blakewood, Harris said, this is Assistant District Attorney Rebecca Martinez. She'd like a word. Martinez extended her hand. Mr. Blakewood, we have Aaron Blake in custody on preliminary charges of attempted fraud and elder abuse. We'll need your cooperation to build a comprehensive case. Of course, I said. What do you need? Everything, she replied. Your investigation file, the recordings, your documentation of his pressure tactics. From what we've seen so far, this looks like part of a much larger criminal operation. I handed over the 89-page binder. My investigator is a former FBI agent. Every document is verified and sourced. Martinez flipped through the pages, her eyebrows lifting. This is impressive. Detailed timelines, victim statements, financial forensics. Mr. Blakewood, you realize this could dismantle Aaron's entire network. That's exactly what I want, I said. We're talking multiple felonies, she continued. Fraud, racketeering, financial exploitation. He could be looking at 10 to 15 years. Emma stepped closer. What about the other victims? Mrs. Henderson, Mr. Chun, all those people. We'll be reaching out to them starting tomorrow, Martinez said. With this evidence, there's a strong chance they'll recover part of what they lost. She paused. If you don't mind me asking, why didn't you report him sooner? Because he's a lawyer, I said simply. I needed airtight proof. If I'd gone to the authorities too soon, he would have claimed everything was legitimate. I had to let him commit the act, in front of 200 witnesses. 200 witnesses, Harris said with a grin, including a retired judge and half the Des Moines legal community. Not bad for a simple farmer. Martinez smiled faintly. Your strategy was risky, but brilliant. Aaron can't claim ignorance. Not after presenting fake notarization and fraudulent documents at his own wedding. Emma asked, what happens next? He'll be arraigned in the morning, Martinez said. Given the evidence, we'll push for no bail. She closed the file and looked up at me. Would you be willing to testify? Absolutely. And you, Miss Blakewood? Emma straightened her shoulders. If my testimony can help protect other families, then yes. I'll testify. Harris's radio crackled. He listened for a moment, then smirked. Aaron just requested a lawyer. He's claiming it was all a setup and threatening to file misconduct charges. I couldn't help but laugh. Of course he is. He still can't accept that a simple farmer outsmarted him. Martinez shook her head. That recording of him bragging about a $2 million payday, that alone proves intent. Mr. Blakewood, Harris said, we'll need your formal statement tomorrow at 9. I'll be there. After they left, the ballroom felt cavernous, echoes of what had been both a wedding and a reckoning. Emma turned to me. Can I ask something personal? Always. When you started investigating Aaron, were you scared? I thought about it. Not about what I'd find, about what I might not. If he'd turned out to be innocent, I'd have looked like a paranoid old man who destroyed his daughter's marriage. But I couldn't ignore my instincts. What made you suspicious in the first place? The timeline, I said. Real estate planning takes time. Aaron wanted everything signed immediately. That's pressure, not planning. She nodded. And I was so focused on keeping the peace, I ignored the warning signs. You weren't supposed to see them. Manipulators hide behind charm. But eventually, they always slip. Emma studied me for a long moment. You didn't just protect the farm, did you? I met her eyes. No, I protected you. If I'd accused him without proof, you'd have been forced to choose between him and me. I couldn't let that happen. So I waited and let him expose himself. Tears shimmered in her eyes. I'm sorry I doubted you, Dad. I put an arm around her. You have nothing to be sorry for. You acted out of love. He acted out of greed. Those two don't even belong in the same sentence. Now what happens to us? Now, I said, we rebuild. Together. 3 weeks later, Emma pulled into the driveway, the winter sun glinting off her truck's hood. She climbed the porch steps, a manila folder under her arm. The annulment's final, she said, sitting beside me. Legally, my marriage to Aaron Blake never existed. I smiled. And emotionally, getting better every day. She handed me the folder. Dad, you'll want to see this. Aaron's been charged with 17 felonies, fraud, conspiracy, racketeering, elder exploitation. How many victims? 12 confirmed, but the FBI thinks there are more. They've traced about $15 million stolen over the last 5 years. I exhaled slowly. An entire criminal enterprise. Exactly, she said. Aaron's firm was targeting rural families, people with assets but limited financial sophistication. He'd meet them at church, auctions, community events. That's how he found me. The realization hung heavy between us. Emma, I'm sorry, I said quietly. She shook her head. Don't be. It's strange, but knowing it was all manipulation makes it easier. I can stop wondering if any part of it was real. What about restitution? The FBI froze his accounts. They've recovered about $2 million so far. And his law license? Gone. Permanently. What about his partners? Facing charges. Turns out his brother and father were in on it too. The whole family firm, 10 people, built their careers on exploiting the elderly. I whistled softly. So our case didn't just expose Aaron. It dismantled a network. Emma nodded. Detective Harris says your investigation started the domino effect. Without that file, they'd still be operating. We sat quietly for a while. Then she said, Kyle's attorney, Aaron's, offered a plea deal. 25 years instead of life, in exchange for cooperation. What do you think? I think as long as it protects future victims, it's justice. That's my girl. 6 months later, we were walking through the north field, inspecting the corn before harvest. The sky stretched wide in gold above us. Dad, Emma said, stopping to study the rows. I want to take a more active role in the farm. Not just as your daughter, as your partner. I smiled. You're already more qualified than most people running corporate AG firms. Qualifications aren't experience. I want to learn everything: crop management, finances, contracts, risk prevention, especially fraud prevention. Fraud prevention? I asked with a grin. Dad, we were targeted because Aaron thought we were unsophisticated. I don't ever want that to happen again, to us or anyone else. What are you planning? I want to start a victim support fund. Use part of our profits to help families who've been scammed, and maybe partner with law enforcement to educate rural communities. I stopped and looked at her, my daughter, standing tall in the field her ancestors had tended, sunlight catching in her hair. Your mother would be proud, I said softly. Emma smiled. You really think so? I know so. You've turned pain into purpose. That's the strongest kind of legacy. She looked across the rows. I still feel foolish sometimes. I let him fool me. No, Emma. You trusted. There's a difference. Naive people never learn. Trusting people do. And you've learned. She smiled through the wind. Then maybe that's my inheritance. Not just the land, but the wisdom to protect it. I grinned. In that case, your next lesson starts tomorrow. What's that? Forensic accounting. Emma laughed, the first genuine laugh I'd heard from her in months. So the next con artist who comes after us. We'll find 2 investigators instead of 1, I said. As we walked back toward the farmhouse, the evening sun painted the sky in shades of fire and gold. Aaron Blake had tried to steal a legacy. Instead, he'd awakened a generation determined to protect it. Sometimes the quiet ones have the loudest victories and the longest memories.